The social worker handed me a bus ticket and $73 until I opened the envelope that would lead me to a ranch I never knew existed and a truth that would change everything. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button real quick. Tomorrow, I'm sharing a story that'll leave you absolutely speechless. I was 18 years and 2 months old when I walked out of Oak Ridge Children's Home for the last time. Most kids counted down the days until they aged out, excited about freedom and independence. I just felt terrified. Mrs. Chen, my case manager, had done her best to prepare me. She'd helped me apply for community college, set up a meeting with a job placement counselor, and even found me a room in a boarding house for women that would take most of my grocery store paycheck but keep me off the streets. "You're going to be fine, Riley," she said, walking me to the front doors with a folder of important documents tucked under her arm. "You're one of the most capable young women I've worked with. You'll figure it out." I nodded, not trusting my voice. I'd been at Oak Ridge since I was 6, after my mom died, and no relatives could be found to take me. 12 years of shared bedrooms, rotating roommates, and learning to keep my most precious belongings in a locked box under my bed. It wasn't a terrible childhood, but it wasn't mine. It was borrowed time in a borrowed space, always temporary, always conditional. Mrs. Chen handed me the folder along with an envelope I'd never seen before. "This came for you last week," she said. "It's from a law office in Montana. I opened it to make sure it wasn't a scam, but it looks legitimate. You should read it when you have time." Montana? I'd never been to Montana, didn't know anyone there. I shoved the envelope into my backpack along with everything else I owned and climbed onto the city bus that would take me to my new life. The boarding house was exactly as depressing as I'd imagined. A narrow room on the 3rd floor with a single bed, a dresser with a broken drawer, and a window that overlooked a parking lot. The shared bathroom down the hall smelled like mildew, and the communal kitchen had a note taped to the refrigerator warning residents not to steal each other's food. I unpacked my duffel bag, hanging my 5 outfits in the tiny closet and setting up my laptop on the dresser. This was home now. It wasn't until late that night, laying in the unfamiliar bed, listening to sirens wail in the distance, that I remembered the envelope from Montana. I pulled it out of my backpack and tore it open, expecting some kind of scam or maybe a case of mistaken identity. Inside was a letter on official law firm letterhead from someone named Patricia Winters, attorney at law, based in a town called Copper Ridge, Montana. The letter was dated 3 weeks earlier. "Dear Miss Riley Carter," it began, "I am writing to inform you of a matter concerning your late grandmother, Catherine Marie Carter, who passed away 4 months ago at the age of 82. I stopped reading and stared at the words. Grandmother, Catherine Carter. I'd never heard those names before in my life. According to my file at Oak Ridge, my mother had been estranged from her family and had never provided any information about relatives. The state had tried to locate next of kin when Mom died, but had come up empty. My hands shaking, I kept reading. Your grandmother spent considerable effort in her final years attempting to locate you after learning of your mother's death. Unfortunately, the foster care system's privacy protections, while important, made this search extremely difficult. She hired several private investigators before finally succeeding in finding you just 6 months ago. By then, she was already quite ill with late-stage cancer. Mrs. Carter made arrangements for her estate before her passing, and I am writing to inform you that you are the sole beneficiary of her will. She has left you her property, a ranch of approximately 500 acres located outside Copper Ridge, Montana, along with all buildings, equipment, and livestock currently on the property. Additionally, there is a savings account with approximately $38,000 designated for property maintenance, taxes, and your personal use as you transition to ownership. I read the letter 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something. A ranch, 500 acres, $38,000. It seemed impossible, like one of those scam emails promising millions of dollars from a Nigerian prince. But the letterhead looked real, and when I Googled Patricia Winters, I found a legitimate law practice in Copper Ridge with her name and photo prominently displayed. The woman in the picture looked professional and trustworthy, with gray hair and a kind smile. The letter continued with instructions to contact her office to arrange transfer of the property and to discuss the estate details. There was also a phone number and an email address. At the bottom, in a handwritten note, Patricia had added, "Your grandmother left several personal items for you, including letters she wrote before she passed. I think they'll help explain everything. Please call me at your earliest convenience." I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay in the dark, staring at the water-stained ceiling, trying to process this information. I had a grandmother. She'd been looking for me. She'd left me a ranch. None of it made sense with the narrative I'd constructed about my life. The story that I was unwanted and alone, that my mother had cut ties with everyone and chosen to struggle as a single parent, rather than accept help from family. At 6 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and called the number on the letter. A recorded message told me the office opened at 9 Mountain Time, which meant I had 4 more hours to wait, since Montana was 2 hours behind my time zone. I spent those hours researching Copper Ridge, Montana. It was a small town, population around 3,000, located in ranch country with mountains visible in the distance in every photo I found. The main street had the kind of businesses you'd expect in a rural western town: a hardware store, a diner called Sally's Place, a feed and tack shop, a small grocery store. The elementary school's website showed smiling kids in cowboy boots posing with their agriculture projects. It looked like a different planet compared to the crowded city where I'd spent my entire life. At exactly 9 Mountain Time, I called Patricia Winters' office. A receptionist answered and put me through immediately when I gave my name. "Riley," Patricia said warmly, like she'd been waiting for my call. "I'm so glad you reached out. I know this must all be very confusing and overwhelming." "That's an understatement," I managed. "Is this real? Did I really have a grandmother in Montana?" "Yes, absolutely real. Catherine Carter was a remarkable woman who never stopped looking for you after she learned about your mother's death. Let me explain the situation as I understand it. According to Patricia, my mother Jessica had left Montana at 18 after a devastating fight with her mother. The details of that fight had died with both of them, but it had been serious enough that Jessica cut off all contact. She'd moved across the country, changed her last name, and refused all attempts by Catherine to reconnect. "Your grandmother tried for years to find Jessica," Patricia explained, But your mother was determined to stay hidden. Catherine hired investigators, reached out to mutual friends, even posted messages online, hoping Jessica would see them. Nothing worked. Then, about 7 years ago, Catherine learned through a former neighbor that Jessica had died. She immediately tried to find you, but the foster care system wouldn't release information about your whereabouts. Privacy laws prevented them from confirming you even existed. But she found me eventually. About 6 months before she died, she hired a very persistent investigator who managed to track you down through school records and other public information. Catherine was already quite sick by then, but knowing where you were gave her peace. She immediately updated her will and made arrangements for you to inherit the ranch. She wanted you to have what should have been yours all along. My throat felt tight. Why didn't she contact me? If she knew where I was 6 months ago, why didn't she reach out? Patricia's voice softened. She wanted to. She wrote you dozens of letters that I have here in my office, but she was also terrified. She'd already lost your mother to their estrangement, and she was afraid that reaching out might push you away too. She worried you'd hate her for not finding you sooner, or that you'd reject the inheritance and any connection to her. In the end, she decided to leave you the ranch and let you decide whether to accept it or not. She hoped the property itself would be a bridge between you, something tangible that showed how much she cared. I wiped tears from my face with my free hand. What was she like? Tough as nails and soft as butter, Patricia said with obvious affection. She ran that ranch alone for over 40 years after your grandfather died. She was respected in the community, known for being fair but firm. She also had a generous heart. She helped more than one struggling family in this area, always quietly, never looking for recognition, and she never stopped grieving the loss of your mother or the years she missed with you. We talked for another 30 minutes. Patricia explained that the ranch had been maintained by a property manager since Catherine's death, a man named Frank Martinez who'd worked for Catherine for 20 years. The cattle herd was small but healthy. The buildings were in good condition, and everything was ready for me to take over whenever I was ready. What if I don't know anything about ranching? I asked, the fear suddenly overwhelming. I've never even been on a horse. Then you learn, Patricia said simply. Frank can teach you, and the community here is supportive of newcomers who are willing to work hard. Or, if you decide ranching isn't for you, you can sell the property. It's yours to do with as you choose. But Riley, I hope you'll at least come see it before making any decisions. Catherine put her heart and soul into that land. I think you should know what she's giving you before you decide whether to accept it. I agreed to fly to Montana the following week. Patricia arranged everything, using money from the estate to purchase my plane ticket and promising to pick me up at the airport herself. I quit my grocery store job before I'd even started, gave notice at the boarding house, and packed my life back into the same duffel bag I'd unpacked just days earlier. Mrs. Chen was thrilled when I told her about the inheritance. This is incredible, Riley. It's like something out of a movie. Your grandmother must have loved you very much to go to such lengths to find you. I wanted to believe that, but I also felt angry. Why had Mom cut her off so completely? What could have been so terrible that she'd chosen to struggle alone rather than accept help? And why had Catherine waited so long to find me? I'd spent 12 years in the foster system, 12 years of feeling unwanted and forgotten. Where had my grandmother been all that time? The flight to Montana was the first time I'd ever been on a plane. I pressed my face against the window during takeoff, watching the city shrink below me until it looked like a toy model. As we flew west, the landscape changed dramatically. Cities gave way to farmland, then to vast stretches of empty territory, and finally to mountains that rose up like ancient guardians of the land. Patricia was waiting at the small regional airport, exactly as she'd promised. She was taller than I'd expected from her photo, with an easy smile and a firm handshake. "Welcome to Montana, Riley. I'm so glad you're here." The drive to Copper Ridge took 45 minutes on roads that got progressively narrower and less maintained. We passed through landscapes so beautiful they didn't seem real. Rolling hills covered in prairie grass, mountains in the distance with snow still visible on the highest peaks, even though it was late May, and sky so big and blue it made my chest ache. "The ranch is about 10 miles outside town," Patricia explained as we drove. "It's remote, but that's part of its charm." Catherine loved the solitude. She used to say the land spoke to her in ways people never could. We turned off the main highway onto a gravel road marked by a weathered wooden sign that read Carter Ranch Est, 1972. My heart started pounding as we drove down the long driveway, past fences that stretched in both directions and cattle grazing peacefully in green pastures. Then the house came into view, and I stopped breathing. It was a log home, not huge, but solid and welcoming, with a wide front porch and windows that reflected the afternoon sun. Behind it stood a large red barn, several outbuildings, and corrals with horses visible in the distance. The whole scene looked like something from a postcard, impossibly perfect and completely foreign to everything I'd ever known. Patricia parked in front of the house, and we both got out. The air smelled different here, clean and sweet, with undertones of grass and animals and something else I couldn't identify. Silence surrounded us, broken only by the sound of wind moving through the trees and the distant lowing of cattle. "This is it," Patricia said softly. "This is your grandmother's legacy, your legacy now." A man emerged from the barn, tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and a cowboy hat pulled low over his eyes. He walked toward us with the easy gait of someone completely comfortable in his environment. "Riley, this is Frank Martinez," Patricia said. "Frank, meet Riley Carter, Catherine's granddaughter." Frank pulled off his hat and extended his hand. His grip was calloused and strong, his eyes kind as they studied my face. "You look like her," he said. "Same eyes, same stubborn chin. Catherine would be real happy to know you made it here." "Thank you for taking care of things," I managed, suddenly feeling completely out of my depth. "It's been my honor," Frank said. "Your grandmother was a good woman and a fair boss. This ranch meant everything to her, and knowing it's going to you gave her peace at the end." He gestured toward the house. "Why don't I show you around? Help you get your bearings?" What comes next is something I never saw coming. Stick with me and make sure you subscribe. The inside of the house was exactly what I'd imagined a ranch home would look like. Wood floors worn smooth from decades of use, a stone fireplace that dominated the living room, comfortable furniture that had clearly been chosen for durability rather than style. Family photos covered the walls, and I stopped in front of each one, studying faces I'd never seen but was somehow connected to. "That's your grandfather Joseph," Frank said, pointing to a photo of a smiling man in his 30s standing next to a horse. "He died before I started working here, but Catherine talked about him all the time, said he was the best horseman she'd ever known and the only man stubborn enough to keep up with her." Another photo showed a little girl on a pony grinning at the camera with missing front teeth. "That's your mother," Frank said quietly. "Jessica, about 6 years old." Catherine kept that photo on her bedside table. She'd look at it every night before bed. I touched the glass, tracing the outline of a mother I barely remembered. She looked happy in this photo, carefree and loved. What had happened to change that? What had driven her away from this place and these people? The house had 3 bedrooms upstairs. The master bedroom was clearly Catherine's, with a large bed covered in a handmade quilt and windows overlooking the pastures. The second bedroom had been kept as a guest room, simple and neat. But it was the third bedroom that made me stop in the doorway, my heart suddenly racing. It was decorated for a child, a twin bed with a pink comforter, shelves filled with books and toys, a small desk by the window. Everything was clean and carefully maintained, as if waiting for someone to come home. "Catherine set this up about 5 years ago," Patricia said softly from behind me. "After she learned you existed. She said she wanted you to have a room waiting for you, even if you never saw it. She'd come in here sometimes and sit, imagining what you might be like, hoping someday you'd walk through that door." I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They came in great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. Patricia put her arms around me and let me cry, not saying anything, just holding on while I grieved for a grandmother I'd never known, and a childhood that could have been so different. When I finally calmed down, Frank was waiting downstairs with coffee. We sat at the kitchen table while he explained the ranch operations. Catherine had run a small cow-calf operation, keeping about 70 breeding cows and selling the calves each fall. It wasn't a huge moneymaker, but it was sustainable and covered expenses, with some profit left over. She also leased out about 200 acres to a neighbor for hay production, Frank continued. "That brings in steady income twice a year. The horses are mostly retired now, too old for hard work, but Catherine couldn't bring herself to sell them. She had a soft spot for animals that had served her well." "I don't know how to do any of this," I admitted. "I have never been around livestock. I don't know anything about ranching or farming or any of it." Frank smiled. "Nobody's born knowing this stuff. You learn by doing, by making mistakes, and figuring it out. If you're willing to work hard and ask questions, I'll teach you everything Catherine taught me. But I gotta be honest with you, this life isn't easy. It's long days, hard physical labor, and dealing with weather and markets and animals that don't always cooperate. You have to really want it." "I don't know what I want," I said honestly. "A week ago, I thought I was going to spend my life working minimum wage jobs and living in a boarding house. Now, I own a ranch in Montana. It doesn't feel real." "Give it time," Patricia suggested. "You don't have to decide anything right now. Stay here for a while, learn about the place, figure out if this life fits you. The property is yours, whether you live here or not. But I think you owe it to yourself and to Catherine to at least try." I spent that first night alone in the ranch house, lying in the bed Catherine had prepared for a granddaughter she'd never met. The silence was absolute, in a way I'd never experienced before. No sirens, no traffic, no sounds of other people moving around in adjacent rooms. Just wind and the occasional creak of the old house settling. I pulled out the letters Patricia had given me, dozens of envelopes filled with Catherine's handwriting. I opened the first one, dated just 6 months earlier. My dearest Riley, it began. I'm writing this knowing I may never get the chance to meet you, but hoping these words will help you understand the choices I made and the regrets I carry. Your mother, Jessica, was my whole world. From the moment she was born, I devoted myself to giving her the best life I could. Your grandfather and I poured everything into this ranch, building something we could pass down to future generations. We thought Jessica loved it as much as we did. We were wrong. The letter went on to describe the fight that had torn their family apart. Jessica had gotten pregnant at 17 by a boy Catherine and Joseph had forbidden her to see. When they discovered the pregnancy, they'd insisted she give the baby up for adoption, convinced that keeping a child would ruin her future. Jessica had refused, and the argument had escalated until she'd packed a bag and left in the middle of the night. Catherine and Joseph had been too proud to chase after her, convinced she'd come back once she realized how hard life would be as a single teenage mother. She never came back, and I never stopped regretting that pride, that stubbornness that cost me my daughter and years with you. When I learned Jessica had died, it broke something in me. But finding out you existed, that I had a granddaughter out there somewhere, gave me a reason to keep going. I spent every resource I had trying to find you, and when I finally did, I was already dying. But knowing you're out there, knowing you'll read these words someday, that's enough. The ranch is yours, Riley, not as an obligation or a burden, but as a gift. Use it however you choose. Live here, sell it, let it sit empty. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you know you come from strong people who loved fiercely, even when we loved badly. You come from this land, from generations of people who built something with their own hands. That's your inheritance, not just the property itself. I read all 23 letters that night, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pink as dawn approached. Catherine's words painted a picture of a complicated woman full of regret and love in equal measures. She'd made mistakes, let pride and fear guide decisions that she'd spent the rest of her life regretting. But she'd also built something remarkable, this ranch that represented generations of hard work and dedication. By the time the sun rose fully above the horizon, I'd made a decision. I was staying, at least for now. I was going to learn everything Frank could teach me about running this ranch. I was going to honor Catherine's legacy by trying, even if I failed miserably. Frank arrived at 6 in the morning, looking surprised to find me already awake and dressed. "You ready to learn how to be a rancher?" he asked with a grin. "I have no idea," I admitted. "But let's find out." Thank you so much for listening to Riley's story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever discovered something about your past that completely changed your perspective? Have you found your place in the world in an unexpected way? Share your story with our community, and until next time, remember that sometimes home finds you when you least expect it. Click on one of the 2 stories on your screen for more incredible journeys.